Hey everyone, welcome to the episode in the React Foundation series. In this episode right here, we're going to be discussing the concept of pages and components. So basically, if we take a look at what we have over here, you'll see that we have some kind of a format going on over here where there's like a background and then there's like a gradient background and then there's some kind of title over here. We've got the form. In this case, we're trying to sign in. And then we have a link over here that says, if you don't have an account, you can click. Now, if we think about it, if we think about how we're going to adapt this concept to, the sign up page, the registration page, you see that actually most of it can be the same, right? For example, this invoice over here, yeah, maybe we can change this to like sign in rather than invoice to be so, people know what page they're on. So we can change it to something like this. And then basically, so sign in. And then basically when we go on the registration page, it says, hey, create an account, instead of saying sign in. And down here, it'll say, hey, you already have an account. Click here to log in. So the only parts that would change, the layout, everything, design, everything would be exactly the same. The form would be slightly different because we would have a password confirmation, because if they need to sign up, they need to put in, the password and the confirmed password, and they need to match and all that stuff. So the actual, the way that this page is created is very much the same. The only difference is going to be the form. So what we can decipher from here is that we can reuse a lot of this code. But how are we going to structure our app in a way that we can reuse this code? So what I'm going to be doing in this episode is I'm going to introduce the concept of pages and components. So everything right now that we have is in the components directory. So what we really want to do here is actually create a new folder and move a lot of the stuff we have in here out into pages. And we want to call them pages because that's exactly what they are. So what's the difference between pages and components? For me, component is something that you can reuse across your application. So for example, if you have a modal box, that may be a component that you can reuse over and over again. If you have like this kind of page layout of some sort going on, you can reuse this over and over again. Like this kind of like structure, if you will, this structure over here, or if you have like like a movie viewer, like in YouTube you have like you click on a full screen, it'll show you like a theater mode of that may be a component that you can reuse across your app, or any kind of text editor, or like something that you can reuse over and over and over again is what I consider components. Page is something which is more like, it has a certain structure. It has, and it's only that's one page that's going to look like that. So for me, that's kind of like how I like choose whether I'm going to create a component or I'm going to create a page. Technically, you could think of this as a page as well, but there's so many parts of it we can reuse. So I'm going to start to separate that page versus component thing. So you understand more the more I actually do it on screen with you guys. So I'm going to head over into the code over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this component folder. I'm going to create a new folder here called pages. And basically what I'm going to do is everything that we have over here right now, I consider them to be pages. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy everything into pages like that. So that's where we're going to break some things in our React app, I guess. Layout, contacts, user sessions, components. Great. So in here, I'm going to create a component. Now it's going to be a little bit confusing, called page. And in the page component, I'm going to have a file called auth.js. And in here, I'm going to have an index.js. So what is this page component? This is where naming kind of like becomes a little bit tricky. I have a certain kind of page that I want to reuse over and over again, like the structure of this page. As an example, I'm going to have some kind of title, I'm going to have some kind of form, and I'm going to have some kind of link down here. That's the pattern, right? So that's why I'm creating this auth page, because whether I'm doing reset password, or I'm creating the registration, or I'm creating the sign in page, they're all going to have the same structure, which I'm going to reuse across all of them. So yeah, and basically, whichever page wants to be like used, however, I can just pass it into the components and have that render out differently. So just bear with me. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to create a lot of the structure as a component. So I'm going to do import React from React. And here I'm going to do class auth extends React.pure components. So one thing I've learned as well is I've started to use pure component because they are faster based on certain benchmarks I've seen. And if you don't need that much, in terms of like observing the changes, just use pure component. And if it doesn't work, just go to component. That's kind of like how I go right now. So I'm going to create a render. And so what I need to do is do a return over here as well. And here I'm going to start to copy some of the stuff that I have in the user session over here. So I'm going to copy this whole thing, this whole structure. And basically auth is going to go over here. Whoa. What happened to my extends? Actually, I think I put it in the wrong place. So I'm just going to paste this here first, cut this, put this here like that. All right. So export default auth. So as you can see, I can have multiple kinds of pages structure that I can reuse over and over. So here I'm going to do import auth from auth like that. And then I'm going to do here an export default auth. All right. So now I have an auth component. And so basically what we need to do here is we need to extract out the form, because the form is going to be kind of like the thing that is the most different about this whole thing. So the extras, I guess we could pass it over as a prop. So the main core thing here is the form, right? And like the label and everything is going to be like, I don't want the form to be a part of the page. So what I really want to do is kind of like cut this part out and have this part here, this props.children like that. And then basically this here, the only thing that's going to be left is we're going to call the page and we're going to wrap it around this form, right? So that's kind of like the way that I feel that it should be. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to import the page. So import page from components page. So all my components are usually, capitalized like this. And then what I do is I will just use them here. So here I'm going to do page.auth. And then wrap this as page.auth like that. So I'm using the dot notation to access the object from the inside components. So it's complaining about my dependencies. I'm not too worried about that. I just want to get this to work first. So the next thing we need to worry about is kind of like the styles here. So some of this style stuff, I guess we could, move them all over. So here I'm going to do a auth.sass. And then here I'm going to start to move them all over. Move them over to the auth component over here. So let's see. I need to do an import styles from auth.sass like that. And basically we have the sign-in wrapper. So I'm going to call it styles.auth wrapper. So we're going to generalize it and rename everything to be correct. Form wrappers, fine. Extras is fine. It's already general enough. So anything that has to do with sign in, I kind of like want to remove, right? So yeah. Extra, sign in wrapper, form wrapper. So everything can go, basically. Everything that we have over here can go over here. And then I'm going to call this, instead of the sign in wrapper is auth. I can even call it auth page wrapper, if you will. So auth page wrapper. Or auth page. Yeah, that's fine. Auth page wrapper is fine. So that should be okay for now. So I guess if everything goes correctly, we should be able to see our content and nothing should change. I'm sure I made some mistake. Still complaining. Okay, not to worry. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be working. So do a reload. Whoops, does not work. All right. So it says components. So I'm going to close this because I changed the directory structure. So I'm sure a lot of things broke. So I'm just restarting my Webpack server here. Can't resolve components. So in my routes, I need to change all this to pages because we changed the structure. So let's see if that works. All right, so that looks good. So let's do a reload over here. Let's see what it's complaining about. I'm sure there's some error over here. Link is not defined. All right, great. Yeah, so then basically, if you take a look at the link over here, you will see that, the link is actually now in the page component here. So what we want to do here is we want to have, like pass this link and this basically the content that's going to go in the extras as a prop. So this dot props dot extras. And then we move this back over here. And then we pass it as a extras. Something like that. And if you don't want to have this humongous, if you have like a complex structure or whatever, that one trick you can do is just do const extras equals, and then just create that extra, something like that, and then just pass it in here. There we go. Extras. That's it. And so basically, this is gonna get passed in as a prop. And then here we're gonna have the different stuff show up here, and we wouldn't have to worry about anything because everything the component will kind of like take care of itself. So there we go. So it just automatically did a reload, and it just it worked. So one more thing we need to do is we need to change this into a title. We need to use a prop for everything. So this dot props title, and yeah, so that we just need to pass it on from here. So title equals sign in, like that. There we go. Everything works. So as you can see here, this is how we can reuse a lot of this stuff now. The form, the CSS, everything can be reused over and over again if we do it right. So I want to change the sign in button as well. So if you think about it, the sign in button just doesn't make any sense. So essentially what we can do is we can even take a look at the style, and we can say, hey, for the button, style it this way. You know what I mean? And we can have that kind of like be the style that we use. Or one more way is like, because the problem is here, if you take a look at the content, the button is kind of like bound in here. So, but this style is the style of the button that we want to use over and over again. So one thing we can do is we can create a button. So button.sass. What we can do is we can do a dot base. So this is the base button, the style for the base button. And we can kind of like move this out from here into here. All right. So now that we have a base button here, what we need to do is we need to override this, use this class in our new page over here. So we're not going to have this styles.new anymore. We're going to remove all this stuff. And here we're going to import the buttons from styles buttons.sass. So basically, we're just importing, reusable classes for things that we're going to reuse again, like not just even in this page, but it's going to be generally in our app, right? So here I can do buttons dot base. And if I have my own custom button, it can all go in here. So let's see what broke. Aha, so I need to make sure that I import the colors here. Import styles colors. There we go. There we go. We're back. So now we did two main things here. We extracted the button out because the button is something which is general. It's not just like going to be in the sign in page. We can use that button in our other parts of our app as well. So now we're having a new Sass file, which is specific just to the button, but we can reuse it across apps. That's why it's in the styles folder. And then we have a new component. It's a page component, and we can have different kinds of pages. Right now, we just have the auth page. But as this grows, you'll see how much sense it actually makes. So now, if you look at the code for the new session component, it's using the page auth, we're passing in the extras, which is different, across the different authentication pages. So the registration is going to have a different extra link, and the title is going to be different, and all that stuff. And so now all we need to do to create the user sign up page, the new user page here, is we just need to import the page auth and basically reuse this to create that for us. So now we have code reusability here. So let me demonstrate that very, very quickly. I'm going to head over into here. I'm going to do an import page from components page. And then here, I'm going to do class new extends react.pure component. And then do a render. And do a return over here. And then here, we're going to do page.auth title equals sign up. And the extras. So over here, for example, if for some reason we don't need to have an extras, we can do just null, just return null if there's no extras props. We're just gonna get a quick skeleton page up very quickly. So I'm not gonna pass in anything. I'm just gonna leave this all empty. So close out page.auth. All right. So this looks pretty good. Whoops, so I need to close out that component. And in here, I'm just going to say blah. Whatever, can be just something quick that we, want to render out. All right, so everything looks good. Everything looks, seems like it's going to be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over here, go back, click here. And as you can see here, we got everything for free. Well, not for free. We wrote that code. We built that component. We wrote that style. And everything is kind of packaged in its own little component that we can reuse across our application. You can see the JavaScript code here. You can see the Sass code here. Everything that we use to create that style can now be reused over and over. And that is, in essence, what I consider is a component in a React application. And then the page is something which is specific, it's going to happen only once. We can only use it once. That's what I consider a page. Conceptually, that's what I believe how it should be. So here, if you want to implement this whole page, which we're going to do in the next episode, it's very simple. We just need to copy the form over, edit the form to have the extra field, and we can just do the rest of the work to wire it up to our backend. All right, so a pretty long episode. So I'm going to wrap it up. Don't forget to sign up, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also become a member on our site. We have exciting news coming Very excited to share a lot of stuff with you guys very, very soon. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up and I'll see you guys in the next episode.